It all collapsed over dinner. Not the plates, not the shouting, but something far more dangerous. Trust. He came home to a perfectly set table, flawlessly cooked chicken, and a laminated manifesto titled 20 Rules for a Healthy Marriage. Time limits at the gym, scheduled selfies, a ban on calling female colleagues. Sound like a game? It wasn't. It was surveillance dressed as love. And while she spoke of honesty, he already knew. There was something much darker hiding behind the smiles. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watch this video. I value every one of your comments. So let's get started. The moment I walked through the door, I sensed something was off. It wasn't the low, moody lighting or the trace of rosemary chicken that lingered in the air like a memory. It wasn't the pristine arrangement of the living room, nor the soft jazz murmuring in the background, intentionally subtle. No, none of that explained the tension pressing in. It was Marissa, her stance frozen, arms folded tightly across her chest, a knowing smirk barely flickering on her lips. She stood next to the kitchen island, where dinner was already served on a neatly arranged plate. Beside it, something glossy reflected the overhead light. I dropped my keys into the ceramic bowl by the entryway, loosened my tie with careful ease, and made my way toward her, doing my best to hide the creeping discomfort coiling inside me. "What's this?" I asked, voice calm, though my instincts already screamed. "Order," she said crisply, each syllable clipped like it had been rehearsed. "Something we've been sorely lacking." I looked down. Bold letters at the top of the laminated page read, "Marriage Code, 20 Rules for a Healthier Relationship." Each item was numbered, color-coded, presented like an elementary school wall chart. A slow burn began in my chest as I scanned through it. Rule 1. Location sharing is mandatory at all times. Rule 3. Any expenditure over $50 must receive prior written approval. Rule 7. Hourly selfies required when alone. Rule 11. Gym sessions must be kept under 45 minutes. Rule 14. No calls to female colleagues after 6 p.m. unless scheduled in advance. Rule 20. Breaking 3 rules in a single week initiates a 2-week intimacy suspension. And that was just the beginning. I looked up, met her gaze. She was daring me to react. "You made this?" I asked, searching for any sign that she was kidding. "It's based on Lena's plan," she replied. "Like that should clear everything up." "Lena, the one from the club," I said. "Her husband goes along with this?" "She says it saved their relationship," Marissa answered smoothly. Saved? It sounded more like a slow, quiet suffocation. I kept my eyes on hers, swallowing the urge to rip the laminated manifesto in half. We'd been married for 8 years. But over the last year, since Marissa joined that circle of wives from Kensington Grove, something in her had started to shift. The woman I married was impulsive, electric, someone who once drove halfway across the state just to paint a sunrise from a cliff. Now, she made habit trackers and weighed her salad down to the last almond. Her energy was being poured into curating the illusion of a perfect life, photo perfect, filtered, tightly controlled. I eased into a seat at the kitchen table. The chicken, of course, was perfectly seasoned. I unfolded the napkin, glanced at the laminated list again, and said quietly, "This isn't about stability, Marissa. It's surveillance." "It's honesty," she snapped back. "I'm tired of the distance. I need to know where you are, who you're with, what you're saying. No more blind spots." This wasn't love. It was a power play disguised as concern. But I didn't yell. I didn't throw the paper across the room. I picked up my fork and took a bite. I chewed. I swallowed. "It's really good," I said, locking eyes with her. "So, what made you sit down and write all of this?" "I need accountability from you," she said, leaning in like we were negotiating a treaty. For both of us. That way, it's equal. Equal. The word echoed in my mind like a warning bell, because in that instant, something clicked into place. Marissa didn't want a partner. She wanted a subject. What she didn't realize was that I had already seen enough. The unraveling had started months back. Her touches grew fewer, her affections scripted. Her art classes ran long, and brunches stretched suspiciously late. She changed her passcodes, cut off access to her Apple ID. But I had been careful. I still had her old iCloud backup, and I'd quietly watched. 3 weeks ago, I saw enough texts between her and someone named Darren to understand. This list of rules wasn't a lifeline. It was a leash. While she crafted boundaries for me, she was slipping quietly out the back door. That night, we lay in bed. She wore silk. She faced the wall, and I stared up at the ceiling, a single thought on loop. I don't need 20 rules to win this game. Only one. Marissa didn't expect passivity. She was waiting for a reaction. A slammed door, a heated accusation, a moment she could spin for her circle in Kensington Grove. He couldn't deal with accountability, she'd probably say with a sigh. But I gave her nothing. I gave her exactly what she asked for. For the next 2 weeks, I followed the rules like gospel. I enabled location sharing. I snapped photos of every bite I ate. I checked in every hour, on the hour, 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m., like clockwork, as if she'd programmed me herself. I once needed her sign-off just to spend $65 on a dress shirt for a board presentation. She lit up with pride at the request. "This is what I meant when I said we'd grow together," she declared one evening, wearing a smile so triumphant it was like she'd just claimed a throne. "Can't you feel the shift between us?" "Oh, I feel something," I muttered, setting my phone screen down after sending yet another staged selfie, like a ritual. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I hadn't surrendered. I was observing, learning. Beneath their polished guidelines and daily routines lay a visible framework. Marissa's friendly weekend brunches? They operated more like covert strategy sessions. I'd seen enough to know. They shared tactics like investors swapping hot tips. Slowly dismantle your partner's autonomy. Make him check in before a workout. Require receipts for every fill-up. Ask for screenshots of browser history. And every time Alyssa tried out a new psychological tactic, she'd report back to the group chat, complete with celebratory emojis. At some point, my wife had turned into a field agent in a silent domestic war, and I was her proving ground. But the twist? She never realized I'd tapped into the entire operation. Every message forwarded to a hidden Gmail account I had created for surveillance. She had no idea I knew about Brandon. Yes, that Brandon. The elusive ex from her past turned out to be Brandon Delaney, her former boss at the studio. He'd resurfaced in town half a year ago, and that's when the late-night studio feedback sessions began. But Brandon wasn't just a kept secret. He was her ideal. Rugged, unburdened, divorced, a complete contrast to the obedient version of a man she'd spent years sculpting. At first, there was little physical proof, but the emotional betrayal was stark. I can't breathe around him anymore. He used to be a man, not this compliant pet. I wish I'd met you before the wedding. Things would have turned out differently. That word, differently, landed like a blow to the stomach. She hadn't just been trying to better me. She was preparing to replace me. That's when the full picture came into focus. Marissa wasn't inherently malicious. She was fragile. Her hunger for control was born from fear. The endless rules gave her something to flaunt among women who mistook dominance for strength. Brandon wasn't about romance. He was her exit plan. But none of that excused what she'd done. She hadn't nurtured growth. She'd crossed a line into betrayal. So I began to build a quiet resistance. Precise, patient, relentless. Step 1. Let her keep believing she had the reins. Step 2. Compile every double standard, every contradiction. And finally, I set a trap. Just one condition. A single, unambiguous boundary she couldn't twist, bend, or dismiss. I waited for the perfect opportunity. It came on a Thursday night. Marissa said she was out with the girls, but I'd already seen her messages. Brandon would be there. Dinner and cocktails at the Waldron. I hired a private investigator to capture exactly what I needed. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to be undeniable. Marissa laughing at the bar. Marissa straightening Brandon's tie. Marissa, hand in hand with him, sliding into a waiting car. She got back a little past midnight, her scent a mix of champagne and expensive perfume. I was already outside on the patio, bourbon in hand, her master list of rules laid out beside me. "You're still up?" she asked casually. "Couldn't sleep," I said, not looking her way. She leaned in to kiss me, unaware of the small camera tucked inside the patio light, recording every moment. "Everything all right?" she asked. I gave a slow nod. "Actually, I've been thinking about your rules." Her face lit up with a smug smile. "Finally ready to follow them?" she asked, a hint of victory in her voice. I looked her in the eye, calm, direct. "No, I'm ready to add one of my own." The smile twitched. "What?" "One rule," I repeated, setting my glass down. "It goes for both of us. Just like yours." She let out a shaky laugh. "Elijah, that's not how this works." "It is now," I replied. She paused. "What's your rule?" I leaned forward slightly. "Transparency, full and equal. If one of us has to be open, so does the other. No more secrets, no more selective truths." She stiffened, arms crossing tightly. "Why would you say that?" "You wanted accountability," I said quietly. "Here's the balance. If I have to meet a standard, so do you." She stood frozen, breathing unsteady. "What are you really trying to say?" I slid a photo across the table. It showed her and Brandon outside the valet stand, their hands intertwined. Her face went pale. "Who snapped that picture?" "I did," I said. "A lie. Or more truthfully, someone I once believed in did." "You were spying on me?" Her voice trembled with disbelief. "No," I replied calmly. "I hired someone to keep me safe, from you." She reached for the photo, but I blocked her hand. "I'm done being on the defensive." "This goes beyond your little fling, Marissa," I said, voice firm. "It's about the web you spun around me while you planned your escape." She slumped into the chair, clearly shaken. "That's not how it happened. You stopped seeing me. You stopped—" "No," I interrupted. "You stopped respecting me. And once that was gone, the rest fell apart with it." The silence between us was thick enough to crush steel. Her lips parted, maybe to explain, maybe to lie, but I didn't care. Something had snapped, quietly at first, like fine cracks in a mirror, until the whole thing shattered. The next morning, Marissa said nothing, no apologies, just calculation. She moved like a machine, pouring her smoothie, tapping her phone, flipping through emails. Her shoulders were stiff, the fake smile she used to weaponize was gone. Even her tone in our group chat had shifted. Before, she'd gloat, "Rule number 9 in full effect, guess who just submitted his receipts?" Now, silence. She wasn't retreating, she was pretending the explosion hadn't already happened. But she stayed quiet. To me, to herself. Instead, she tested the waters. "I canceled brunch this weekend," she said offhandedly one morning. "Why?" "Just not feeling it," she replied, with a casual shrug. But her voice cracked at the edges. She hadn't canceled. She was uninvited. The image she worked so hard to craft, that of the rule-abiding, polished wife, was collapsing. After I anonymously sent the photos of her and Brandon to the most indiscreet woman in the Kensington Grove circle, everything began to unravel. By that evening, every single wife had seen them. Marissa wasn't a shrewd operator handling some grand relationship strategy. She was a liar, unmasked, and women who survive on surface perfection, they don't forgive traitors, even when it's one of their own. By Friday, her name had vanished from the Wives of Grove Instagram. The brunch invite list was updated, without her. Even Lena, once her closest ally, texted me, "Just so you know, we've cut her off. That was disgusting." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The real punishment wasn't the spectacle. It was watching her fall apart in silence. That weekend, she made a last-ditch attempt to reclaim control. "Can we talk?" she asked on Saturday. Her voice had softened, almost sounded human again. I nodded and sat, arms crossed. She paced the room. "I made a mistake," she admitted. "Things went too far with Brandon. But it wasn't physical. It was emotional." "Only emotional?" I repeated slowly. I felt lost, unseen, like I didn't matter anymore. You were always buried in work, and instead of connecting with me, you made up 20 rigid rules like I was something to be managed." She stopped, looked at me, waiting for sympathy. "That's not fair," she added. "No, Marissa," I said. "What's unfair is how you built a kingdom of control while you snuck around behind my back." She lowered her eyes, finally starting to feel the weight. "I was wrong," she whispered. "You were cruel," I corrected. "And worse, you were unoriginal. You copied from women who weren't after love. They were just after the upper hand." She sank into the chair, her gaze vacant. "I've lost everything." I exhaled. "That's not true." "Then what's left?" "Time," I told her. "Time to figure out who you want to be after all of this." We sat quietly. The space between us was filled with what neither of us dared to say. For the first time in a long while, she didn't argue. Then came Monday, another test. We were due at a charity gala hosted by the city's architecture board, a group I consulted with. Marissa had RSVP'd weeks ago, likely assuming she'd be celebrated, not condemned. "I can't go," she whispered in a panic. "Everyone will be talking." "They'll talk whether you're there or not," I said, straightening my cufflinks. "But I'll show up, and I'll smile." She lingered in front of the hallway mirror, switching dresses again and again. None of them masked the chaos behind her eyes. "How are you so calm?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. I met her eyes in the mirror. "Because I already know how this ends." The gala shimmered in gold and glass. Sculptures lit by perfect lighting scattered the venue. Crystal glasses clinked delicately, and polite laughter echoed off the marble walls. Marissa wore serenity like armor, yet the way her gaze flicked across the room told a different story. Whispered conversations followed us like shadows. I navigated the gathering, shaking hands with city council members, familiar clients, yes, even Lena's husband. Then Brandon emerged, poised, alone, smirking. He didn't register my presence until I stepped up next to him at the bar. "Elijah," he said curtly. "Brandon," I replied, mirroring his grin. "That exhibit you curated last autumn, well done." His expression wavered, a brief stutter in the mask. He knew then. I leaned closer, voice low but steady. "She told me everything," I said softly. "And now, everyone else knows too." His complexion paled. "This isn't the place." "No," I said, placing my drink on the counter. "It's the perfect place." This was Marissa's arena, her stage. She spun stories here, molded reputations, pulled strings behind the scenes. She controlled the storylines, manipulated the cast, and I had just ripped the script wide open. I walked away before he could speak again. Marissa saw us as I passed. Her face turned to stone, but I didn't care anymore. She wanted perfection. Now she had fallout. Later, in the car, silence hung thick between us. It wasn't until we'd been driving for miles that she finally broke it. "Was this your idea of revenge?" she asked. "No," I answered quietly. "I wasn't aiming to hurt you. I just wanted to restore some truth. I'm not trying to tear you down, Marissa. I'm just not letting you tear me down anymore." She turned away, eyes shining but refusing to fall. She was cornered, boxed in by the structure she'd so meticulously engineered. The next day, her quietness lingered. She drifted through the kitchen barefoot, hands wrapped around her mug like it was the last bit of warmth she could find. When she finally spoke, her voice was tentative, stripped of its usual edge. "I didn't sleep last night," she whispered. I didn't respond. I was already dressed, shirt crisp, blazer pressed, shoes polished. I had a meeting with new investors. She used to ask about those. This time, she said nothing. "Do you still love me?" she asked suddenly. I looked up from my phone. "That's not the real question," I replied. She frowned. "Then what is? Do you love me, or the version of me you believe you can manage?" There was no answer. I headed for the door. "Elijah," she called after me. "What if I want to fix this?" "Do you mean truly fix it?" I paused, hand on the doorknob. "Then we talk," I said. But this time, no roles, no rehearsed lines, no charades. She gave a single nod. Small, but it meant something. A few days later, she invited me to dinner. Just the two of us. No expectations, no polished script. The restaurant was quiet, almost hidden. One she used to love before everything became about image. A place we hadn't been since before the rule book replaced realness. Neither of us touched much of the food. "I ended things with Brandon," she said. "Blocked him 2 days ago." I gave a silent nod. I left that advice group. Deleted the whole chat history, all of it. Still, I didn't speak. She reached across the table, voice breaking. "I miss what we used to be. The real us, not the managed version. Just us." "You can't miss something you've been burying," I said softly. She swallowed hard. "I know. And I'm not asking you to forgive everything today. I just want a chance to rebuild. Slowly, if we have to." It was the first thing she'd said in a long time that felt unfiltered. I leaned toward her. "I'll stay," I said, "but on one condition." Her eyes held mine, hesitant but hopeful. "What is it?" "You go to therapy, on your own. Not for us, not for me, just for you. And you speak honestly in there, because if you can't be real with someone in a room made for truth, there's no way we can be real in here." She looked stunned. "Therapy? Every week? No skipping?" "And if I don't?" she asked. I stood, pulled out $100 bill and placed it on the table. Then I walk away. Back at home, there was no protest. The next morning, she made her first appointment. That's when the real changes began. Not all at once, not with fireworks, but in small, meaningful shifts. She stopped tracking my phone. She quit sending endless check-ins. She picked up her journal again, something that had sat untouched since our wedding. One night, I found her crying softly in the bathroom. The door eased open, just wide enough for voices to slip through. They weren't pleas or apologies. These were tears that came from finally seeing clearly. She was letting go of the version of herself that had fractured us. 2 months later, we were sitting out back again. No distractions, no glasses in hand, no glowing screens, just quiet. "I used to think that being in control meant I was loving you right," she said, eyes following the slow drift of clouds. "And I believed silence meant we were at peace," I replied. We let the weight of those realizations settle between us. We had both misunderstood love. A small, worn smile tugged at her lips. "There's still so much to rebuild." "Yeah," I said. "But this time, we'll rebuild it together." We stuck to just one rule, the only one that mattered. Because true respect doesn't come from enforcement. It comes from equilibrium. Nearly 3 months had passed since Marissa had torn the old rule list in half. The tension in our home had softened. Not mute, just calmer. The heaviness had lifted. No more biting messages. No more lists of do's and don'ts. No more obligatory status checks. Slowly, the affection returned. not loudly, but honestly. Still, healing isn't a straight path. One afternoon, I was sorting through old boxes in my office when I caught her voice in the hallway. Shaky, low, the kind of tone you reserve for hushed, private confessions. I moved closer, quiet as breath. That's when I heard the name, Lena. It had been some time since her name surfaced. After Marissa stepped away from her old circle, they didn't exactly stay silent. Lena had reached out, voice wet with tears, talking about her husband leaving. Her world had started to fray, too. Now she wanted Marissa back, back in the chat threads, back in the power games they used to orchestrate. "Help me fix it," Lena pleaded over the phone. "You were a pro at this, Marissa. You had Elijah in the palm of your hand. I just need to know how you pulled it off." Marissa stood frozen, the phone pressed to her cheek. She had no idea I was listening. And I didn't step in, not to eavesdrop, but to see what she would choose when she thought no one could see. Her eyelids lowered, slow and deliberate. Then she spoke. "Lena, I didn't fix anything. I wrecked it." A beat of silence. "What are you talking about?" Lena asked. "I didn't mold him," Marissa said softly. "I almost lost him. I was wrong. All that control, it was poison," she whispered. "But I've changed. I'm not that woman anymore. And if you're still playing that game, I'm not on your team." She hung up, turned around, saw me standing there. "You heard that?" she asked. I nodded. Every word. Her gaze dropped to the floor, waiting for judgment that never came. I stepped closer. "I'm proud of you," I said. A single tear traced her cheek. That evening, we returned to our place on the patio. The night was tender, still. Our fingers found each other again. "I didn't think I could come back from it all," she said quietly. "The deception, the betrayal, the manipulation. I thought I'd ended us for good." "You almost did," I said plainly. "But you chose to come back. That counts. I don't deserve you." "You do," I told her. "You just had to remember who you were, before the armor, before the rules." She gave a nod and wiped her face. Then, from her pocket, she pulled out a folded note and placed it in my hand. In her handwriting, one sentence: "We don't need rules. We need truth." I smiled, folded it back up, and slid it into my jacket. A year later, we were at a wedding, not ours, but my younger cousin's. During the reception, someone leaned over and asked, "You and Marissa, you seem solid. What's the secret?" I looked toward her, barefoot in the grass, laughing with a circle of kids, hair tousled, joy unguarded. Then I gave them the only real answer I had. "We stopped trying to win," I said, "and we started trying to listen. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you liked this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you."